think I've known this man for 20 years. I think we were both 2 at the time. He is seriously one of the nicest, honest people that I know. Watchmen, Mirror, Mirror, Conan, Charmed. He played Mickey from Seinfeld. Danny Woodburn! Yeah!
Hello, David.
Hello, Danny. How are you?
I'm great.
Good. I love your space. It looks
Yeah,
very
it's
retro in the back.
It is. It's very retro. It's this is our little getaway.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, when we were talking yesterday, we were talking about being, you know, your first stand-up job.
Yeah.
Which I thought was amazing. I never had heard that story.
Right. Well, I had mentioned to you that first time I was on stage was February 19th, 1990. I had been in Los Angeles just 2.5 months, really. I got to LA December 1st, 1989. And I started taking a class with Judy Carter, actually, who was a pretty well-known comedian in the 80s. And she sort of gave me sort of a guideline to my stand-up. You know, how best to be oneself on stage. And, you know, I think that was the thing. I was never like the great joke writer. I could, you know, I definitely would come up with the jokes, you know.
Yeah.
I think more about what I did was just trying to sort of wing it and connect with the audience and talk to the audience. And I really sort of put myself out there that way, but I did have that standard 5 minutes. So we had the showcase at the LA Cabaret, which is long gone, which is in Encino, a mecca for stand-up comedy, apparently. So we had a showcase there, and, you know, I had a good set. I wouldn't say I was the top set of the evening, but I had a good set. And then we were invited by this booker who came to see us to come and do a stand-up contest at a club in Newport Beach. I think that's where it was. So like 1 week later, I only had 5 minutes at the time. She said, "You need 10 minutes." And I was like, oh my God, I had the right 10 minutes. So I came up with this whole routine called Condom Man, where I was a superhero. And I would prep this garbage bag, and then I would pull this garbage bag over my body and be like the Condom Man savior that comes to save the day. And you know, this was the early 90s, so there was a lot of discussion about HIV, and this happened to be a gay club, and I would throw like condoms out at the audience like ninja stars, and I won the contest. I won $50, and it was my second time on stage. And the people that were headlining that show was a group called the Campers, which is a drag show. These guys would dress in drag and do lip sync performances. And one of the performances was like, one guy came out dressed as Lucy, and he would do the Vitamita Vegemin sketch, right? And then another guy came out. The head of the group was this guy. God, I can't remember his name, but he was bald and he had a big bushy mustache. And he came out and he did Diana Ross, and he put on a Diana Ross dress, a Diana Ross wig, and he did Reach Out and Touch Someone You Love. But he had these like appendages for arms that made his arms 6 or 7 feet long, so he could keep his distance as Diana Ross might from the audience, and then reach all the way out and touch people on the shoulder. And they ate that up. But these guys invited me to open for them.
Yeah.
So my entree into stand-up comedy was basically going around with these guys all over LA to do various gay clubs, you know.
Right. And that was before you were on TV or film.
Yeah, it was before anything. Yeah, I had done a lot of theater work coming out of college. I had done a lot of that, but I had no TV background whatsoever.
Right.
So that was me. And then I started getting one-nighters around California mostly.
Right.
This guy Bob Zaney, classic 80s, 90s comedian name, who's a friend to this day. He booked me as an opener. And I went to Santa Maria, Visalia, San Bernardino, Spanky's in Palmdale, and I think they had a Spanky's East and a Spanky's West. Like apparently that was a popular place. San Luis Obispo. So I toured around California a lot, driving my little Tercel, and I did Visalia, and their claim to fame there was that the guy who crashed into James Dean still lived in the town.
Oh.
And he would come out to the clubs, to the club at night. It was really a restaurant. It wasn't really a club. He would come to the restaurant and watch the comedy, the guy that killed James Dean, which is just sort of freaked me out. That was my first, like, 6 degrees of separation, as it were, from somebody in the business, you know?
Right. Oh my God. 6 degrees from a dead man.
And I actually broke down. My car broke down. I ran out of gas in the middle of nowhere, somewhere not far from where James Dean was killed. And I had to knock on this rancher's door and ask him if I could call AAA to come out and get me gas. And this guy was, he was a hunter. He was a rancher. He had every dead animal you could imagine up on the wall. And my first thought was, this is like a scene out of Psycho. I'm not going to make it out of here alive.
You're going to be right on the wall next to the moose.
Yeah. And my first stop was a woman. I asked to see if I could buy some gas from her, and all she had was diesel. So that's where I was. I was in a town where all anybody had in gas was diesel. So
you said that, and I thought,
this is pre-cell phone, so I had to stop and find a phone somewhere, you know.
Yeah, you said all she had was a diesel, and I thought all she was a diesel. Different thing.
Okay.
But now, and then, do you think, or was it from stand-up comedy that you started getting roles on television and film?
No, it was really totally different. They weren't connected at all. I mean, I was never good at marketing myself back then. I didn't call like agents, say, come see me do a show, you know. I never did that, any of that.
Yeah.
So back then, before the internet, before phones, you know, cell phones or putting your pictures up online, any of that, you literally had to pound the pavement. So I went, basically door to door, knocking on doors to see if somebody would represent me. But I'd actually lived in San Diego for a couple of months with a friend before I came to LA.
Yeah.
And so I got an agent in Oceanside, California, and they invited me to like an agency party, and I figured, I'm going to an agency party. And it turned out to be like a religious meeting for the Baha'i faith. And I was like, this is not the agency for me. And while I lived in San Diego, they got me an extra job in LA that paid $40. So I had to drive all the way to LA to get $40. And then when I moved to LA, they got me an extra job in San Diego. So I had to drive all the way to San Diego for my $40. So here's a little bit of trivia nobody knows, is that there's a movie called Killer Tomatoes Strike Back.
Yes, I remember that one.
With John Aston and a well-known comedian at the time named Rick Rockwell, who had the lead. And I, being a comic, I knew who Rick Rockwell was. I don't think anybody else really knows who Rick is nowadays. But I went down there to be an alien, and I put on this alien head that had this little slits for eyes, and they filled it with talcum powder to pull it over my head because it didn't fit me. So they pulled it over my head, and the slits pressed against my eyes. Oh. And by the end of the however many hours I was there, my eyes were red and raw. I had an allergic reaction to the talcum powder, and then I had to drive 2.5 hours back to LA that evening. It was a terrible experience. But it's a little known fact. I'm the little alien guy in Killer Tomatoes Strike Back.
Everybody's got to rent that movie right now. Rent.
Please don't.
Please don't. Now, how did Seinfeld come about?
I had done. It was an odd series of events. I was always looking for work. I had sold. I had worked at a telemarketing firm for a while, trying to fundraise for nonprofits at a telemarketing firm while I was doing my stand-up. I had done some stand-in work, standing in for. I stood in for a kid on a movie called Servants of Twilight, which is a horror film with Bruce Greenwood. Actually, was the lead in that all those years ago. So every now and then I see Bruce somewhere on something.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, Bruce, and we chat, and he knows me, but he doesn't know how he knows me. So I was working on that, and that was more money than I'd ever seen in my life at the time. So I was like, I dumped the telemarketing thing, but then, things were getting more difficult. So I had another job selling boots, cowboy boots, at a place called Thieves Market in Studio City. And I had gotten, while I was there, I'd gotten a little film, a little kids film called The Magic of the Golden Bear. And then I'd also done an episode of Murder, She Wrote, which oddly, Amy got me that job, my wife, and
right,
my girlfriend. But Amy got me that job because she had an audition for a mime on the show, and she said, "Why don't you come and crash this audition with me and just sign in?" So I went with her, and they wanted a robotic mime, not an actual mime like Marcel Marceau, but somebody that could do the robot.
Right.
And so I went in there, and it was for the part of a toy. John Hillerman was an eccentric toy maker, and the toy was like a gunslinger. So they dressed me up like a robot gunslinger, and they put a weird mask on my face, and I move like that, But I do this thing where I pretend to shoot Angela Lansbury, and I go like that, and my hand goes bang like that, and then I tilt my head back, and I go like a robot. And so I booked that gig, and it was like an extra role, there's a story on my IMDb about wearing Bob Hope's pants, and that was.
Oh yes, yeah.
That was where I went into my dressing room, and I picked up these pair of pants, and they were from Western Costume, and the label said Bob Hope, 1957, son of Paleface. So now it's like, okay, here's my new connection. I'm wearing Bob Hope's pants for a day.
Did you get to take the pants home?
No, I didn't. I would have loved to have taken the pants home. Right. But Ms. Lansbury said to me at the time, she said, "Danny, we have to have you back for a real role." And I was like, wow, that'd be exciting, And sure enough, within a few months, I was back on the show. I had done 2 more episodes of the show, and that was all before Seinfeld. So then I quit the job at the Thieves Market boot store, and then I had this audition. This was the end of '93. I had this audition for Seinfeld, and I went in 3 or 4 times, up against all the competition. And back then, I was like the young upstart coming in. All these established little guys, giving me the evil eye when I show up at an audition. But we're all good friends now that I've come to meet over these years. But I went in, auditioned like 3 or 4 times. Finally, I met with Jerry and Larry for one final audition with casting director Mark Hirschfeld. And I did an audition, and they said, "Danny, why don't you wait in the inside office?" So there's like 2 office spaces. So I thought, I made it from the outside office to the inside office. This must mean something. Yeah. And sure enough, they went out and they sent everybody else home, and they had booked me for the role of Mickey. And I started work immediately.
Oh my God!
I went right from that office space right to the table read with everybody.
Oh my God!
It was like I had never experienced anything like it.
Yeah, usually it would be like at least one night.
You go home, you come back, you go to a costume fitting, you come back in like 4 or 5 days. But like
one room to the next room to the reading.
Exactly. So it was very exciting. Very exciting.
I don't believe that.
If you had gotten in the back seat of the car, we could have figured this whole thing out.
Well, why were you holding the door open for?
Not for you. Who holds the door open for a man?
Well, I thought it was a nice gesture, but I guess I was wrong.
Let's just put their names in a hat.
I don't even know their names. Look, why don't you just take the one that was on the left?
I'm not sure she's my type.
Oh, everybody's your type.
What the hell does that mean?
You've been married 3 times.
That's it! It's go time!
All right, take it easy. Hey! Oh, come on, let him go. You want to throw? Let's throw!
Hold on a second. just show up early for your next date, sit across from each other, and see who the girls sit next to.
That's not bad.
All right.
All right, so we let the girls decide.
Yeah. Why should we knock ourselves out?
Yeah, I want to wear that shirt next time.
No, no one wears a shirt next time.
That's right, because they already saw it.
We'll look like idiots.
I love that. Now, you mentioned Amy, your lovely wife. Now, when did you guys meet? Was it before
We met at a comedy club. We met.
you were doing comedy?
Yeah, we met doing stand-up at the LA Cabaret where I first started, and where she first started doing stand-up, and we got to be, comedy buddies. We hung out a lot, and she actually did a lot of theater back in her hometown, so she was like a big name in Minnesota in the theater world. So they would call her back and say, "Can you come do a show?" And then she would go back and do a show, and then she would come back to LA, trying to get her foot in the door here, but he was always called back to Minnesota to do another play. So I think it was that one time she went back and she asked me if I could watch her cat, and I said, "Sure, I'll watch your cat," And I drove her to the airport. The moment you drive the girl to the airport, it's all over. Right? So I drove her to the airport and I watched her cat, and then the rest is history.
Oh my God. Well, you mentioned also theater, that she did theater. I mean, in New York or in Philadelphia, you grew up, right? And you did a lot of theater there?
Yeah, I went to college at Temple University, and I, started doing plays while I was in college. And then, luckily enough, one of the plays I did was a musical called Viet Rock. And I had auditioned, and the director didn't really know where to put me, but he liked my audition so much, he made me his assistant director. And then over the course of rehearsal, I ended up becoming in the show. So I was assistant director, sort of. I think he just wanted me on the set with him, on the stage, hanging out. And he was my acting teacher as well. And so, so I went from being the assistant director to being in the cast. And that show, because it did so well, it actually went to different places. It went to the Chekhov Studios in New York. It went to a place in Philadelphia called the Painted Bride, which is a really well-established, it's a theater that takes on new projects a lot. And then we did another show just outside of the city at the Allen Lane Art Center. So this was me, like my touring world, So we started to take this show everywhere. And that was my first entree to New York. So I did a bunch of theater while I was in college, and then I auditioned for a play in New York at the end of the winter of '89, I guess. Yeah, winter of '89, and just before I came to LA. And that was a show. It was a show called The Soda Jerk, and it was an original piece. And the show opened at 11 o'clock at night, and so it was like, it was, that's New York theater for you.
Was it a full-length play?
Yeah, it was like an hour and a half show, and my character was very strange. It was the ghost of an actor who played a superhero on a television series. So,
oh, that's great.
His name was Bucky as a superhero, but his real name as the actor was Donnie Maducci, and it was sort of part of this sort of ethereal dream sequence of the lead character.
Right.
I don't remember much about it, except I remember they had made a great costume with a cape and everything, and then they had put POW across, or kaboom or something across his chest, so I could open my shirt, and that's how I died, and show kapow across my chest. And so I opened my shirt and revealed this is how I died on the show, whatever. It's a very strange play, but it was a lot of fun. And I didn't know at the time, but I had worked with a very well-known theater actress at the time named Honora Ferguson, who's very well known in Broadway circles. And then another buddy of mine ended up working with her years later, which is it's just sort of weird how things come back around, So yeah, I kept the superhero outfit. I still have it to this day.
Oh my God! You ever wear it for Halloween?
I have one for Halloween. And Amy and I both went out one year. I was the superhero, and she wore another costume that I had, which was that of a sheep. I had a sheep costume from another play that I did. So she went as a sheep, I went as a superhero, and we went to a comedy night at some steakhouse in Beverly Hills, and we both performed. And then we were driving home, and we said, and this is before we met, we said, let's stop and do a trick or treat, right? So we just pull up on Crescent Heights, and we just pull over to this guy's house, and we see his TV's on. So we thought, we'll go ring the bell and we'll say trick or treat. And he comes to the door. We ring the bell and we go trick or treat like we're two little kids. And he looks at me and he's like trying to shake the candy, like to be spooky. He's like, here you go. And then he sees me and he's like totally flipping out because he didn't understand. Is this a kid? What's happening? I don't understand what's happening. So we just took our candy and departed. And we have that great story of wondering what this guy thought after we left him as probably his last trick-or-treaters of the evening, because it was like 9:30 going on 10 o'clock, I guess, when we knocked on his door.
It just made me think, are we going to ever be able to go trick-or-treating again?
I know, October is right around the corner, and we have to figure out a way to
virtually do it.
Right, get kids to go door to door via Zoom somehow. I don't know.
Right.
Somebody can figure that out.
Different Zoom rooms. Oh, a Zoom haunted house. That sounds fun.
That does sound fun, actually. You should do that, David.
Okay, copyright. Oh my God. Okay, I'm going to throw out a name.
You can call it Zoom and Gloom, actually.
Ooh.
Or Zoom and Doom.
I started going everywhere, but Zoom and Zim and Zoom and yeah.
I see you're fancying the. We're because of COVID, we're back in like mullet days. We're all combing our hair all the way back, and it's getting long.
Oh yeah, I'm ready to do a ponytail. I haven't had this like hair since like my days at the Haight-Ashbury. I did. I lived.
That's a whole other interview altogether.
Oh, it sure is. I like for 9 months I lived in the Haight-Ashbury, grew a ponytail and smoked pot. Then I cut my ponytail and quit pot.
Sort of thing. No, you don't seem like the type, really.
No, the only thing I like. Do I have it here? No, it's not here. It's the roll-on.
Chocolates.
Roll-on on the neck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you roll it on. It's called Kind.
You said you're going to throw out a name? What was the name?
Yes. Whatever comes to your mind.
Oh, throw out a name. You want me to throw out a name?
No, I'm going to throw out a name to you.
Yeah.
You're going to catch it and do what you want with it. Robin Williams.
Oh. So many emotions come up. Working on that film with him, Death to Smoochie, was one of the greatest parts of my career so far. He was such a giving performer. He was so friendly. He's one of those people you meet and you go, he's everything you want him to be. I'll give you a story. So, I was not top billing. I had opening title credit, which was a big deal. I think it's one of the first major studio films where I had an opening title credit. So that's a big deal.
Yeah.
We had an event. The premiere event was in New York. Okay. So I called the studio and I said, hey, I want to come to the thing, blah, blah, blah. They said, well, we don't have you budgeted to go.
What?
So they didn't have me. So I said, well, I'm not going to miss this premiere. I'm going to go. So I said, well, I want to go. So they said, if you get yourself out there, that's fine. You can come to the premiere. You'll get all the press and all of that. And it's a career thing. You need to go and get the press, right? So, and it turned out that only Harvey Fierstein and Robin and I were the only 3 actors from the film to show up. Everybody else was on set working something else. Danny D couldn't make it. He was directing.
The director wasn't there?
He couldn't make it. Danny DeVito, he couldn't make it. He was on another film already. So we were the only 3 like major faces from the film to show up. And I had the best time with them. And we all went to dinner afterwards, and it was Harvey and Robin, and then I think Billy Crystal showed up to dinner, and his wife, and then John Lithgow walked in to say hello. He just happened to show up at this restaurant that we all went to, and he walked in, and he just listened to stories and engaged with them, and just had the best time. And then he was talking to me, and he said, they flew you out. I see they flew you out. And I said, no. We flew out on our own. I didn't want to miss this. And he's like, what? I can't believe that. And he said, I want you to call my assistant, Rebecca, who I still know to this day. He said, call my assistant tomorrow. So I called her, and Robin had bought Amy and I to fly back to LA, 2 first-class tickets, all expenses back. And I looked at it, it was like $5,000 to get 2 first-class tickets at the drop of a hat from LA to New York. So that's quintessentially, I think, who he was in terms of his personality. And when he went, I think it was such a loss to the whole world nowadays. It's so much tragedy around his passing. But I mean, I definitely cherish those moments. One time on the set, we went. He said, "I'm going to go shopping. Do you want to go shopping with me?"
Yeah.
And we get in the car to go together. His driver from the set takes us to some. We were in Toronto shooting. Actually, he takes us to some boutique or whatever. He's doing his classic thing. He's picking up things and making jokes about them, and we're going back and forth with all of that, having all that. And we're getting back in the car, and this guy comes up, and he looks at Rob and he goes, "Mork." It's like, of all the things to say to him, it's 2000. It's a 2001. Yeah, it's 2001. And he just goes, "No, it's 2000." He goes, "Mork." And we were just like, really? That's his go-to? Like, of all the things. And I turned to Robin after, he's like, Robin's thing was like, "Hey, boss, how are you? Good to see you, boss." He was just very, cordial with anybody that came up to him. And he talked to the guy for a minute. The guy went on. And I said, "Mork?" I said, "That's who he called you? That's who his go-to?" And I said, "Does that ever end?" He goes, "No." He goes, that's always the go-to. They always go back to Mork. And I just thought that was hysterical, There's so many other references to make, but Mork was the one that stuck in people's minds. So, yeah, we just had the best time. And working on that show artistically was nothing like I've experienced before. Because, Robin on the set would do his thing. He would, like Danny would give, he would do a take as written, and then he would say, "All right, Robin, do a take for you."
Yeah.
And so we would do the Robin take, and he would go off and do whatever he was going to do. And then it got to the point where he goes, "All right, Danny, you do what you want to do." So he would tell me I could go off. And there's a couple of jokes in that film. One that comes to mind is a joke I do about Vincent Schiavelli, who's high on something. And he comes and tackles me at the house, and he ties me up so I can't go to the show or whatever.
Right.
And I called Robin's character on the phone. And what was his name? I can't remember Vincent's character's name, but he says, I say to Rainbow Randolph, that was Robin's character. I said, "So-and-so is here." And I said, "He's jacked up higher than a prom dress in June." So that was my like the one joke I remember that got into the film. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. I just hearing these stories, because I never got to meet him. He was my favorite. I mean, I think of stand-up comedian Robin Williams. So yeah, for you to have been close to him, for all the people who did know him. I mean, for me, who didn't know him but loved watching his specials, and I remember when I found out, I was in the back house at Angela's house, and I just let out a yell.
Yeah, I know.
And
his assistant called me, actually. His assistant called me on the phone.
Yeah.
And I hadn't heard yet. I mean, I was just driving, and he called me on the phone. He said, "You know about Robin?" And I said, "No." And I was driving, and he said, "Are you driving?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Pull over." So I pulled over, and then he told me. So it was, somebody I admired my whole life, and then got a chance to work with. like somebody who inspired me to get into business in a sense, you know. And then I got a chance to work with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a big blow, big blow.
Yeah. I have to say, you, I mean, are an amazing person and an amazing friend, because when I had my
Am I supposed to get my wallet out now? Is that what's happening?
yeah later when I when I had my heart healing, as I call it, you. Whenever I think of that, whenever I think of being in the hospital, one of the first things I go to, if not the first thing, is your voice on that
Me
song.
yelling at you?
Yes! It was
You're like, you're about to turn 50, right? You're going to turn 50, and you're like,
weak.
I got to have this party. And I'm like, you're nuts. He's like, you know, you're trying to organize this big party. And I was like, you can't do any of this shit. What are you talking about? Settle down.
Oh my God, I
I
know.
said, you'll have your party. Have it later. Have it later.
Uh,
You're like, geez, arranging a huge 50th birthday party from your hospital bed after your heart attack, your heart healing.
well, and because of that, you probably saved me, because if I did have that party, I wouldn't be here now.
No,
That's what you said.
changed
You
it.
can always have it later. If you have that party, you won't be here for 51.
Exactly.
I love how you said it.
But that was me saying it to you, but it was also Amy in the background, like knowing what you're doing. She's yelling at me saying, you tell him this, you tell him that. So it's both of us. It was both of us on the phone with you. I was the conduit. You know?
No, yeah, she's like the channel.
Amy was furious. She's like, he's crazy. What is he talking about?
Oh my God. Well, I have to say too, you have like you were talking, you have so many good friends and in the business that you work with and that you go out on auditions with and you are working against them, or how does it work?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, there's always a friendly competition, you know.
Hello.
Hello. What?
What's going on?
What is happening? You guys are invading this Zoom. You're nuts.
We're invading the Zoom.
What?
I'm driving the car.
Look at Mr. Hip over there. Look at Mr. Hollywood over there.
I'm going for my Man in Black vibe while I drive. Teal is the director of photography.
Wait a minute, you're driving? I guess you're not holding the camera.
I'm driving, so
let's say goodbye to Nick.
It's it's enough when I drive. What's going on, Danny boy? Oh,
You guys been sitting there the whole time, like waiting in the wings?
David.
We've been here since 9 a.m. Just waiting.
I can
Just
see.
waiting.
I can see you clearly haven't showered, Cove, so that's why.
You know,
when Mark got on, he did not have a mustache when he joined this Zoom.
Exactly.
That was a long way to go for that one.
You know, you are the journeyman of comedy, Nick, for sure.
And that journey doesn't always end with laughs.
If you stick around long enough, Nick, you'll get a laugh.